Let's now continue talking about edges a bit more. So what I have here is just a couple of examples, and I would say that these are most often situations that you might encounter in your beginning stage and also later on. So maybe two you recognize because we talked about it already in the previous video. So this connection right here and this connection right here. So for example, let's start here, then I'm going to go back to this one. And basically what we have here is the same situation that we had in the previous video, where we just needed to redirect parts of our geometry. So this is just the similar situation, but now we have detail here inside. So again, what is happening, I will just maybe put it a bit more here and maybe isolate the two. All right. So basically what we have here, again, this edge flow, which was originally this as a flow. So if we see this edges go in this direction, and again, if we check with the multicut, this is the direction of our edges. But what if, so for example, we want this edge to come to here and also from here to here. So basically that we get this flow instead and not this one, because for now you can see whatever I try to do multicut, I cannot get this flow. And what we talked about in the previous video is that this edge will always redirect other edges. So that simply means that by using that logic, we can now create this flow. Now the only problem is now that we need to remove these two edges, and when we remove these two edges, then we have situation where these edges have nowhere to go, meaning that they are forming an n-gon. So if I slide this up, this is an n-gon, and basically n-gons we're trying to avoid. So that just means that then this edge has nowhere to go to form a quad. And we could technically now come here and do this, but then we are creating more geometry on our surface. And same thing here, we could come here and then close it here, and this will give us an n-gons here. But then again, we are creating a situation where we have more edges that maybe we do not need. With a plus, we now have the edge flow that we wanted. So this is a plus, and this is now the negative side. Also, what we could have done, let me just go a couple of steps back here. Also, what we could have done is just removed these parts. But again, the negative side to that is that now we have imbalance here in our geometry. So basically here we have even spread, and here we don't have that spread anymore. And when we talked about complex poles and when we talked about curved surfaces, if this would be on a curve, meaning that there would be a deformation in this area, simply because now this edge has a different flow. So it will just depend on again, situation when to use what and where. We can also take a look one more situation. I'm just explaining this because I would like that we take a look all aspects and the plus and minuses of each, because some are useful in some situations, some are not. So we just need to balance that in the future. There's alternative to both, which can be that we spin edge. So let's say that I select this one and go to shift right click and then flip to spin edge and simply spin the edge. And what that will do, if we now check, that will give us the direction maybe that we want. So if I now again check the multicut, you will see now that we have two loops that are going in this way. Basically, we are redirecting in this way. So what is happening with flip or spin edge is that basically you're not losing any geometry. So you're not adding more or you're not deleting. So with the spin edge, it's the same if you would delete this one. So we have our edge count -1. And if we add this is just that one back. So we're not losing any geometry, and then we can manipulate the mesh in a way we want. So this is what flip spin edge does. So these are basically the techniques that we're going to use to redirect our geometry in a specific direction. What we can do here, for example, is we can just, let's say, select this parts and then use a bevel. And this is also going to be the way that we are going to create our details. So for example, like you see in this situation, what we now did, we just beveled the edge and we added more geometry to this edge, like so. And basically what we can do now to create this detail, I'm going to create a small offset here, and I'm going to hit G to extrude to create this thickness. The only problem here you might notice is that we get this little sides at the very end. Just a small tip, if you want to avoid those sides, there is a different way we can do this. We can add multicut or simply loop right here in the middle. And then what we can do is we can bevel this loop. So basically it is the same thing as the extrusion, except now at the very edges, we are not getting that situation. So if I now go to thickness, we get just this, which we can delete. So there are just two ways. So this is one, and maybe if you missed it, I'm going to show the extrude one more time just so you see the difference. So this is the extrude, because with the offset, we get this little polygon at the very end. So, okay, so I'm going to use it with the multicut here and just use bevel real quick. And then let me just add some thickness here, and there we are. All right, so here I would like to point just one thing. So here we have again the same situation like we were talking about in the previous video, where we have these edges. And if we now, let's say, preview both, and I just want to increase the number of subdivision and preview this one, we can see that, let me just increase one more time, that this one is actually more sharper than this one. So here we have more of a smooth edge, or here we have sharp edge. We are going to manipulate that situation that we mentioned in the previous video in the same way here as well. So if you remember, I will just again quickly demonstrate that with, I can just maybe extract this. And I'm going to just actually not extract. I wanted to duplicate it. All right. And let me just put it to the side, increase a bit. I just want to again demonstrate what we talked about previously. So it's easily again, just that we understand it better. So we had this edge flow. And if you would subdivide this, it would be pretty sharp corner. Now, if you would have a soft corner here, what we would do in that case, we would do this connection, if you remember from the previous video. So basically what is happening is that here we have exactly the same thing. We have this 45-degree angle, which is creating this soft transition. So basically what we need to do is we need to just convert this into the one that we saw previously. So we would basically need to do this. And then we would have that sharp edge. The only problem is that we need to actually now close this loop, that it cannot be open. It needs to close on a quad. For now, it's an n-gon, so meaning that this needs to continue somewhere. And if we just follow its trail, we can now continue it like this, which will create a new loop. Or we can just simply, again, redirect it right here. So for now, what is happening is that we have a triangle here. But if you remember what we're talking about, if we just pretend that we are sliding this one here, so just pretend that this point from this edge is sliding to this one, it's basically then this what we have here. And we can then just continue the flow of this edge to here and continue the flow of this edge to this one, like so. And then basically we have this as our situation. So I hope that makes sense. And I just want to give you one more tip here. So whenever you see this happening, notice these two edges, how they behave. So you see how they're splitting from one another and going like inside. So just imagine in your head that this stays still, like that it's not moving, just like, let's say, like ghosted, like creating a copy. And if you think like that, then you can just ghost that back, meaning that this connection can later be redirected in this direction. So it's kind of a tell. So it's just a small tell that you will know each time when you're doing an extrusion and edges are behaving in this way, then it just means that you can probably redirect these edges back to form a situation like this. So just a small tip, and I really hope that it makes sense. And if not, feel free to ask anything in the comment section down below. And if we actually don't want this, then we just leave it as it is. So we can just leave it as it was before. So I'm going to just again undo here a couple of steps. So if we want to have smooth, then we just leave it as it is. All right, so let's now go back and let's continue to talk about some other situations. So let's see this situation, because this is also something that we were talking about before. And basically what's happening here, if you remember in previous video, we had an example where we had a circle here inside, and that some edges are not allowed to go in that circle. So basically what is happening here is that again we redirected some of the edges. And again, for example, I'm going to show. So for example, we have again a circle here. Let me just again create a small situation here, and so let's select this here. Let's do a small offset and let's create a circle. All right, so let's say that this will do, delete. All right, so let's now say that we need to add 2 more edges here, but basically we cannot add these edges because again, they are influencing how the circle looks. So that just means that they need to stop at least here or here. Basically this needs to be intact and this edges we need. So in that case, what we would do is we would do the same situation as before. So what I can do is just quickly here, add a cut and then connect this to here, connect this to here. And again, just ignore the others, because if you can imagine what is happening here, then you can easily ignore the other edges. So this is what it's highlighted. This is what we need. And what it's not highlighted basically can be removed. So this can be removed and this can be removed, and then we have a situation like this where we just redirected these edges to here. So basically we just contained these edges within this area. So this is another similar example where let's say that here it's maybe better seen, where we have a situation where we are, let's say, in a very tight space here and we have a very wide space here. So the more edges we are starting to add, you can notice what is happening, that this area is becoming tighter and tighter, and this is something that we are trying to avoid. So we just need to organize our geometry to, let's say, even it out, so that because in this, essentially what we are searching for is even distribution of edges, so that these edges look more or less like these. So these are not the same size as these. So in that case, what we would do is we would do this connection. So basically this is called connection. Let's say we have 3 edges. We're going to refer to it as a 3 to 1 because we have 3 edges flowing into 1. So then we're going to refer like 3 to 1, let's say. So 3 edges flowing into 1 in this direction. And even though that if this looks like a triangle, technically it's not. So if you slide this here up, then you can see that this is a quad. So basically this is what we're searching here. And so let's do the same thing here. And basically how you do that is you can do it manually. So you can now, let's say I want to redirect this flow here, redirect this flow here, and then delete this one and delete this one and delete this one. And then we have this situation where again we have 3 edges flowing into 1, and now more or less all of these polygons look, let's say, more or less the same side. They're not so squeezed that much. And so this is one way how you can do it. The other way is if you go to use weld tool, and I'll just weld, let's say, these points together. Okay, I just need to target. So weld these points, and then just control delete this one. And there we are. So now we have more organized geometry that just makes more sense, because we do not want to have that condensed area. But again, what we need to be careful is that with all this, we are changing the flow of our edges. So see what is happening here, that we can add 1 more edge here, but here the flow is now changing. And the new edges will look like this. So again, this is something that we need to keep in mind once we start working with it, that when we add situation like this, we are also changing the flow of our edges. And it will also depend on the detail. So if you need a specific detail, then we would also need to keep that in mind. But we're going to talk about that later. So here's also another situation where, let's say that for the sake of details here, that for some reason we need the geometry like this here. So again, what is happening, since we are borrowing these edges, we are again creating imbalance here. So you can see where's the imbalance. Here is fairly everything nice and organized, even size, and then comes where we have this not even edges here, basically not even polygons. So what we do in that case? So we do the following. So we just connect this point like this, basically just connect it in a situation. So whatever you see, let me just again show you. So whatever you see this situation like, so basically it's looking like stretch polygon, but sort of like a triangle looking one. In that situation, you can always connect it like this and just continue the flow. Continue the flow here as well. So even though that it's looking that here's a triangle, but if you remember, the triangle will always make your loop stop. And then we have this situation. So the problem is now more or less solved. And the thing is, even though that this looks like a triangle, and again, it's not. So if we just remove these edges, actually, if we just slide them, then we can see that there is actually a quad hidden. And if we now again check, this is our new flow. So let me just go here outside, and what I'm trying to do is select this. All right. And yeah, this is then the new flow that we get here. And now we solved the geometry where now again we evened out the spread. So it's no longer that imbalance like we had it here. So this is very, very imbalanced mesh, and we are going to encounter this a lot of times. So when we do, then we just know that we need to close it in this way. So basically split it in half, and it doesn't matter if one is triangle, because even if it's triangle, now when we add a loop there, it's going to create a quad because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points here. So again, if we slide, then this quad is more obvious. So this is how we would solve this situation. And again, later, if we, let's say, think the same, that this is becoming too dense, we can again do the same thing as we did before. So I just need to select one, just connect these points here and redirect them, and then create, let's say, a situation like so, where again we have, let's say, more even spread. So this is really like a game and just trying to find different situations, but I'm just trying again here to go through the couple of ones that we're gonna use the most, and that just to rotate them, combine them together, and so on. So let's take a look at another example that we have here. So it's again very, very similar situation where we would need this this solution right here. So if I now come here, you will see that this is going to be a triangle here, and this is a quad. So triangle and a quad, loop will always stop on a triangle. So what is happening here is now that again here now we have a quad. So this is a quad, and if we start adding loops, we're gonna get this this situation like that. So what does this tell? That basically just tells us that whatever you have this very, very angled geometry, that you can also come here and draw it manually like this if you wish, and then create also a situation like that. So this is very, very common as well, that we're gonna have maybe geometry like this. So whenever you have this very angled situation, then you can know that you can also add manual edge loop like so as well. And basically it is the same if you would come here and add this loop here and add this loop here. Basically it is the same type of geometry, except with ours we're just drawing it manually with a few extra exceptions that we are continuing the flow right here. So again, just something to keep in mind here. All right, so let's take a look at one more example, which is this one here. So here I have something in the background, so I can delete this one. And basically what this one does, I will just create a clone here again. and go through a couple of situations as well. So I'll just isolate the two. All right, so what is happening here is that we are sort of combining a couple of things. So let's say that we need a detail here in the middle. We'll just try to match. So let's say here. So here we need a detail. And in many situations, we are just going to create an offset here and then use extrude inside. And we're going to get, let's say, a detail like this. What we can do also is in this stage, we can also manipulate the edges. So we can, let's say, slide them closer and slide them closer as well, like this, and then do again, same situation. I'll just extrude, let's say, inside, and then we have our detail. This is something that we're going to use also very often, but now I would like to show a situation where maybe we would need something else, where maybe this is not working for us. So let me just try and do this, because it might be sometimes that this is not working. So let's try and do something else. So in that case, what we would do is we will just bevel one edge, because let's say that we need very fine detail like this. So let's say we need only this part to extrude. So what happens here is that now we have a triangle here, and then we have two end guns here, and then it's going to be just a matter of how to close this. So we can close this in a couple of ways. One way being, like, for example, if we add, let's say, a loop here in the middle, and now we have a quad here. And now we have two end guns here, and to close an end gun, we can do, let's say, this connection. So basically what's happening now that we have a quad here, quad here, quad here, and quad here. And we did this and not, let's say, this connection, because maybe this is already occupied with something else. Let's say that we have some connection here. And if we would do the same connection here, now let's say from this area to here, then we would have a complex pole here. And if we're trying to avoid complex pole and we need this edge away, then maybe we would go with this situation. Now let's take a look at the other one. And the other one is if we would do something like this. And then basically, if you now notice, what's happening is that we actually here we have quads. So let me just move this to a side like this. But the problem is that we just now need to connect this to here. So this is looking very similar, this area right here, to what we have here. So it's basically more or less the same thing, just a different approach. So again, we're going to use this a lot as well. So again, we're just going to combine all these. Now what I presented here, we're going to play with those, combine them in a specific situations, and just try to work around. All right, so now the next time when we talk about edges, we're going to try and implement all of these situations in the practical example, where we actually try and create a geometry so we can see how each of these edges is behaving on a different surface. So we're going to try and create smooth surface without deformation, implementing one of these or all of these examples that we cover right here. So I hope that this all made sense, and if not, just feel free to ask in the comment section down below, and try to answer if I can. And yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.